It's tabletop time. I'm Dave.
And I'm Jen.
And today I'm going to be making some big chungus lads.
Ooh, to big boys?
That's right. I'm going to be making Trader Ogryns, and I'm going to be making these specifically for boarding actions. We're talking big slab shields to smash down walls, and I've got a little idea to homage Rainbow Six Siege.
Oh, well, better get to it.
Let's do it. Let's get those lads going.
Those big chungus boys.
All right, lads. Let's do it. So it's time to actually start, and I'm pretty excited. Ever since the new Ogryns and bullgryns came out, I wanted to do something with these giant slab shields, and making some awesome boarding action Ogryns for my trader guard seems like the perfect thing to do. I'd been eyeing off this bullgryn kit for a long time, and I don't even collect Astra Militarum. Well, until Trader Guard recently. And I already knew the equipment I had to pick for boarding actions. Definitely those massive slab shields for advancing up corridors, and those brutal bullgryn mauls for, cracking skulls once you get there. The assembly of the bullgryn models was pretty simple and easy broadly, but I did have a major conversion to do, which is one of the poses. I'm going to be emulating the cover of Rainbow Six Siege, which means I'm going to need one of these bullgryns to be running. So I pretty violently hacked up the forward leg of one of these bullgryns just so it could be leaning into a run a little bit more heavily. This required some careful positioning of the shield and chopping of the arm as well to make sure he was holding it forward at an aggressive angle. Now, if you've never built the Ogryn bullgryn kit, I will say one thing I really like about it is the way that the bullgryn armor closes around the torso of the Ogryn. So you have these nice singlets for the Ogryns and then this armor that goes on top, which means there's detail preserved underneath, and altogether I just think it's a really cool way of building these kits. But speaking of that armor, it was time for me to clean up some of the filthier elements of it.
Are you removing this Aquila from this chest plate?
By now, Jen, you should know that is standard fare for my trader guard. No pesky Aquilas here.
Hey, I did this too recently, so I can't talk.
I was actually really impressed with how cleanly they all came up once the Aquilas were removed.
And hey, if you made any mistakes, it would just be battle damage at the end of the day.
The next major change was one I honestly didn't expect. I brought a box of bits from Chaos Warriors for Age of Sigmar, and within it, I actually found these old heads from Dragon Ogres. It's one of those funny situations where conversion leads to conversion leads to conversion. A long time ago, I'd made some Slaneshi Dragon Ogres, and I'd actually swapped all of their heads with bits from the Chaos Spawn kit, which left me with Dragon Ogre heads. Now, I planned on putting gas masks on my Ogryns and green stuffing them on, so the big underbite and sharp teeth wasn't going to be a problem. I'm going to be covering that all up. Now, I was remarkably surprised to see the Dragon Ogre and Ogryn heads were literally the same size. And there's something really cool about these angular, medieval-looking, aggressive helmets that suits a Traitor Guard aesthetic for Ogryns. Now, of course, these heads did mount differently on the necks, but all that required was some careful clipping and carving until I could find a nice little fit. But due to the perfect scale match, the Dragon Ogre heads fit on like a dream.
I actually really like his underbite. It kind of gives him some more character.
Now, a theme for all but the poorest of conscripts in my Trader Guard army is gas masks. The world I imagine they come from is sort of an ash waste, so there's heaps of need for respiratory protection. And while Ogryns are incredibly stupid, their commanding officers do see them as a useful resource worthy of protection. And in boarding actions, oxygen can be very important. So these Ogryns have big tanks on their back, which I made from the flamethrower tanks from old Imperial Guard kits.
Are they actually called Ogryns? Is that correct?
Yeah, Ogryns.
Ogryns.
Well, it's derived from Ogren, because...
So is it Ogryns or Ogryns?
I think it's Ogryn, but the thing is, 40k is basically derived from fantasy back in the day, so I think this was their nod to ogres when they were originally conceived.
Abaddon, or Abaddon.
A bad guy. A bad guy. With fuel tank in place, I used my trusty Japanese cable that I got from the Gundam store in Akihabara, and I squished the end of it, and that part will be shoved and glued into his mouth, and then the rest of the cable can flexibly join up to the flame tank. I kind of love how it looks like he's drinking from like a bicycle satchel of water, like he's a marathon runner, but that'll get covered up later with some green stuff. To hide the Aquila tattoo and to add some extra chaosy armor, I used part of an old rhino hatch from a Chaos vehicle sprue, chopped it up a bunch until it looked like battered armor, and slapped that on our charging champion's shoulder. An Ogryn Bonehead is the leader of the squad, and this Bonehead is just smart enough to know he doesn't want to be the first one through the door in a breaching action, so he sent his chump ahead and he's standing behind ready to go in second. He needed his own customizations, and one of those was to make sure I picked the Dragon Ogre head that had the nice bit of little trim decal that I could do gold to mark him out as the leader of the squad. Another perfect fit from the Dragon Ogre kit was this gnarly looking massive spiked maul that they have, which I decided to replace the bullgryn maul to give him another point of difference, a little bit of that chaos viciousness. And it wouldn't be chaos without spiky bits and trophy racks, and I thought the circular vehicle trophy rack frame fit perfectly as a little halo on this Bonehead. This trophy rack certainly makes it obvious who the biggest and baddest Ogryn is on the battlefield. As for the shield, I decided that while the Aquila is a sacred symbol of the Empire, the winged skull is less so. So I actually just glued on a chain and skull onto the front of the Aquila, and I was pretty happy with that. The third Ogryns in the squad got some special attention in the form of a Chaos Knight's shield being glued over the front of their slab shield, which I've got to say I actually think looks really brutal and really cool. And he also got a searchlight from the new Sentinel kit. Usually I wouldn't add something like this on some Ogryns, but as these are themed around the idea of a boarding action, I thought a big stab light on the shoulder was super appropriate for these guys. And with the three models glued together, it was time for green stuff. We just slapped out some strips and made some really bad, low quality looking gas masks onto their face, World War I style, that would hide those ogre teeth and also nicely connect to the wire coming out of their mouth. With some final strips and straps to connect the gas masks around the necks where those areas were conspicuously visible, I was done with my Chaos Ogre conversions. It was at this stage that I knew if I was going to be able to replicate the Rainbow Six Siege cover, I was going to need some poor victims. So I used the two remaining Voidsmen we had left from the Rogue Trader box, cut and reposed them to be slammed out of the way of this Ogryn as it charges through a wall. Jen, you can't stop me. You can't stop me. I'm making my Trader Guard. I've got my Ogryns and my little dying Voidsman, and one of the Ogryns I just finished green stuffing on, so they need a few hours for that to dry. Oh my god. But two of the Ogryns I can start painting, so I'm gonna go out and prime these black. Now there's construction outside, so I'm not gonna film it, but rest assured, I'm gonna spray paint the models, and they're gonna be black. Maybe, there's like very little left in this. We'll see. We'll see. So my Traitor Guard need to be a fast enough scheme that I can put together an army. So something I'm starting to try and focus on more is learning ways to do a quicker paint job that still looks higher quality. Trying to take a little bit of inspiration from amazing painters that we recently worked with, like Emil and Lucas from Squidmar, I decided to use a bit higher contrast in between the brights and shades, and a method of almost stippling on the layers to give texture to these larger armor panels and make them look more interesting. As a bit of a dabble and an attempt, I'm happy with how this worked. It was certainly a lot quicker than trying to build up a gently gradiated blend, and ultimately I actually liked the result more. Now my Traitor Guard scheme I've covered in a little bit more detail elsewhere. For these Ogryns, it was just some lead belcher in the silver areas, as well as some tin bits to bring out some detail in other locations, such as the oxygen tanks on their back. The pants are painted Stonewall Grey, and pretty much anywhere except for the armor that is silver or grey gets a null oil wash and then recovered in the original base coat, and anywhere that is gold, brown, or tin bits ends up with an Agrax wash and another highlight over the top.
I think that this high contrast method you're using works particularly well on the skin on these guys. I think you've done an excellent job here.
Yeah, this is probably some of the fastest skin paint jobs I've ever done, and by trying to focus on where light would be sitting in a fairly quick way and knowing I'm not the best at this, I really feel like I'm slowly growing as a painter. Doing little things like the underlighting reflections on the muscle really helps them look like good volumes, and I'm quite happy with the results. I did second guess myself and use a Reichland Flesh shade on the first guy that I painted, and this is probably the only step that I regret in the whole process. His skin did look fairly natural, and now it kind of looks a little bit jaundiced, a little bit weird, but hey, for a Traitor Ogryn, maybe that is normal. One thing I do like to do with my ragtag bunch of traders from all different places, all gathered together to fight the Imperium, is to ensure I use a bunch of varied skin tones. That's something I practiced here, picking different skin tones for all 3 of the Ogryns. Now the Bonehead in particular, once his skin was done, got something extra special in the form of a little prison yard tattoo. That's right. He loves his mama. I did go with the Australian or English spelling of mum here as opposed to the American mom. And that is, of course, because all of Games Workshop's works seem to be based off some kind of future fantasy England. So, yeah, I'm guessing that the old Oxford spelling rings true in 40k.
When I turned around and saw that you were adding this like magenta pink to your shield, I got super excited. And then you changed the color completely and hey, it looks really, really good, but I kind of was vibing the magenta pink.
It actually does look pretty good with these dark grays and dark colors, I will admit that. But no, I did use the magenta color to add some vibrancy to the 2 layers of yellow that I painted over the top. It really just helps them pop and stand out and makes them feel a lot more saturated. And yeah, well, they're hazard stripes, so that's what I was going for.
Another really clever technique.
For the shock maul, I painted them silver with some really sharp highlight and used tin bits for the little electrical components. I made sure to do a soft glow, just feathering in some blues around the tip, that little power node that runs electricity into the baton. That's right, these Ogryns are rocking shock battens. So you know, when they hit you with the power of a truck and break all the bones in your body, you also get electrocuted.
Are you tired of your craft projects getting you all messy and ruining your clothes? Well, here at Tabletop Time, we've got the perfect solution for you. Alongside other awesome merch on our online store, we also have these cool Tabletop Time aprons. I love them and they really do keep your clothes from getting ruined. Impervious! So go check out the link in the description and grab yourself some Tabletop Time merch. It really helps support the channel and it's also fun to make these spots. So, you know, thanks!
Now the final touches for my traitors is of course the connection to the Alpha Legion. So that meant sponging on some lines of teal, highlighting up to a temple guard blue. These little markings run across all of my army and it's basically just the accent color. Shows homage to the Legion of Hydras.
I really like the technique you used to sponge it on. It actually looks like, well, it has been sponged on by them originally because I wouldn't expect them to paint straight lines, but to sponge it on, I can expect them to do that.
Yeah, the idea with this on all of my traders is that they're basically stealing equipment. So they've got like planetary defense gear, military gear from the depots, and when they turned coat, they've got house paint or whatever is around them of their loyal colors and painted these stripes by hand onto their armor. Now, of course, with a single hasty coat of paint daubed on in the fires of rebellion, stands to reason that this has rubbed off over the course of time or just generally looks more worn and torn than the color of the actual armor itself. With these markings done, all of my metals on all of my traders get a little sponging of browns and oranges to show the rust and wear and tear that their poorly maintained gear starts to accumulate over time.
So, have I bitten off more than I can chew? Well, yes. It's a ridiculous project for the amount of time I'm putting into it. So, I'm gonna get some help. I'm gonna enlist a Jen.
Hello.
Jen's gonna paint my little dudes. We're gonna do a quick paint job and get these little guys, the victims, I guess we're calling them. We'll get them painted up quickly. They're mostly gonna be smashed and burnt, so it shouldn't be too hard. Let's do it.
Yay.
So to paint these guys up pretty quickly, I decided just to follow the good old IG schemes. This meant more khaki colored coats and some green plated armor.
I think this is a nice touch considering how dry and grey my traders are to show that loyal Cadian homage green in the loyalists.
I also thought about the final concept as well. So usually they'd be up against like shock troops or maybe even guys from the army. So I kind of wanted to keep with that green color scheme. It's been a while since I've actually painted in this style, starting from black and and just adding the colors in. Usually I've been doing the Murray method, but I decided to go back to my grassroots this time, laying in some initial colors, some washes on top, and going in with those really sharp highlights. And it was a refreshing process.
I'm super impressed. I knew, Jen, that you were the lady for the job, as you got both of these dudes painted up in like an hour. So thank you. You've really saved my bacon. I would have spent like 6 hours on them and they wouldn't have looked as good.
Sometimes I wonder if I should enter a fast painting competition. I wonder how I would do.
So literally over a year ago, we had this massive idea to completely recreate Kill Team Rogue Trader in 3D, and it never went anywhere, but we did print the entire ship. And this has been a resource that I've actually kept coming back to. Just having a pile of 3D printed like floor tiles and walls been super convenient. And this is the first thing I thought of when I thought about making that Rainbow Six Siege but 40K vibe. So we need some boarding action pieces. I'm gonna grab some tiles, some floor tiles, maybe a wall tile, and I'm gonna make something up. All right, to bring this diorama home, it was time for me to make a little base for me to use. And I had those tiles, had to glue a couple of them together. And then I grabbed 2 doors from the Kill Team Rogue Trader kit. One of them I violently carved the door out of with power tools and a Dremel, and the other one I just glued alongside. I did have to do some trimming on the sides of these to allow them to glue flush together. And once I had suitably scuffed up one of them and bent and buckled it, I could then glue the door as if it was exploding out from the frame. Glary today. Okay, so I'm going to spray these, doing pretty much a Murray method undercoat with some top coats of silver. Hopefully that'll give a nice grungy effect to start with, and I'll pick out some details and weather it up. And we've got our little spaceship boarding action. It's gonna be cool. I promise. I want to start with a whole bunch of brown because rust and dirt. Bit of green for some variance. Silver, basically top coat. And that's our foundation. It's time to make my spaceship real dirty, which means it's time for streaking grime.
Woo! I love streaking grime! Streaking grime! Woo!
Let's do it. We'd like to do a big thank you to our patrons. We'd like to do a big thank you to our patrons. Thank you so much for all your support. It is because of your love, your care, your cherishing, your kisses and cuddles that we're able to make the content we make twice a week.
You can get some really awesome perks for joining up, so if you'd like to consider it, all of the links are down in the description below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, it helps us out immensely and lets us know you like videos like this one.
If you're loving the Trader Guard, the Sisters of Battle, or you're excited for Murray to dive into Tyranids at the start of 10th, let us know. What are you most excited for? What do you want to see more videos on? And yeah, which one of us has the best hair?
It's me, right?
Yeah, yours is pink. It's awesome.
Well, I had a super swell time. What about you, Jen, watching me do this?
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the video game we've been playing, Darktide, that has Ogryns in it, and this was kind of familiar of that, so it had a really cool vibe.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. If you want to see more trader conversions, give me some ideas of what you want to see in my Trader Guard army.
I mean, you've got a knight to paint up as well, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. You know what? I might just do that.
You know, Dave, I sometimes have wished that you're like as big as those Ogryns and can like hold me and protect me.
Interesting. You are soft and I protect.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Ogryn, protect.